we're really starting to build a movement. So thank you so much for taking your evening tonight to be with us. So I'm going to bring back up Alyssa Messer.
So, how many of you have seen or read this report called ACCJC Gone Wild? Woo! Speak into the mic. Boy, I don't usually have a problem with being heard. Okay. So I've been asked to introduce Marty Hittleman this evening, and I'm actually, you know him as the author of ACCJC Gone Wild. When I was a new part-time faculty activist at Cabrillo College of San Francisco, I began to get involved on a statewide level, eventually ran for office, and became the Northern Vice President of the Community College Council of the CFT, the California Federation of Teachers. This is about a dozen years ago, 10 years ago. And Marty was then the president of the Community College Council. This was before he became president of the California Federation of Teachers. And Marty really took the time to mentor me and to be kind to me and to ensure that I had opportunities to learn about things, to be in situations, to be at meetings, to meet people, to sort of understand what it meant to be part of the California Federation of Teachers and what it meant to be a community college leader. It's been very important to me to have Marty as a friend and a mentor over the past 15 years, but more importantly, Marty has really been an advocate for community colleges, and over the last year, he's really been an advocate for City College of San Francisco and for the really devastating work that the ACCJC has been involved in that is impacting not just City College of San Francisco, but all over the state of California. So I'm going to ask, actually, Marty, so why don't you come on up? Woo! We have a brief note about translation.
Sí, nomás si necesitan traducción al español, la compañera ahí detrás de ustedes está haciendo traducción simultánea, entonces por favor se acérquense a ella, tenemos audífonos para que se haga la traducción simultáneamente. Gracias.
All right, so I give you Marty Hittleman. Woo!
Well, let me say it's a pleasure being here. And I congratulate you all on your work. And I'm glad to see your numbers continue to grow. This is an evil that needs to be wiped out. And that's part of what we're doing. So what I'm going to try to do, at least for a little while, is just talk about accreditation, what it is, how bad the ACCJC is, what it's done to the colleges in California, and then open it up for questions at some point. So first of all, let's talk about what the goal of accreditation is supposed to be. According to the United States Department of Education, which by the way the accreditation agencies are answerable to, they say it is to ensure that education provided by institutions of higher education meets acceptable levels of quality. Acceptable levels of quality. Even the ACCJC itself, which is the accreditation agency we're talking about, in their 2001 newsletter said, in achieving and maintaining its accreditation, a higher education institution assures the public that the institution meets standards of quality, that the education earned there is of value to students who earn it, and the employers, and that employers, trade or professional related agencies, and other colleges and universities can accept a student's credentials as legitimate. Clearly, San Francisco's City College of San Francisco meets that criteria. That's the bottom line, as far as I'm concerned. It is a criminal act to shut down a college that is serving its students with quality education. And that's what ACCJC is doing. This agency, by disaccrediting San Francisco, is taking the hope out of the hearts of students in San Francisco and is taking the livelihood of San Francisco City College's faculty and staff, destroying their livelihoods. This is a crime. For scabs, the union movement has taken lots of actions. we need to take an action as well against ACCJC.
Right.
So what does the ACCJC value? Narrow management priorities with an emphasis on documentation, data gathering, and college policies and procedures. And if you read the reasons why ACCJC feels that San Francisco CCSF failed to meet their policies, all are in those areas. None are in the quality of education. As the RP group is a research group. Actually, Vino was one of the founders of the RP group. They brought out a study a couple of years ago because the ACCJC was being so hostile to colleges. They did a study and they found, their conclusion was that the ACC's focus on compliance, not student success and college improvement, was not helpful to the colleges. Compliance. The ACCJC requires procedures such as student learning outcomes. That paradigm is accepted by some, but many faculty members, and I don't know how many here feel the same way as I do, that it's just a waste of time. There's no evidence that I've seen them present or anyone else present that proves that it actually improves instruction. It sounds good, but in my years of education, a lot, I've seen fads and fads and fads. This is just another one in my mind. Another way to keep us busy and to reduce education to answering a bunch of questions. Not thinking, not critical thinking, not learning how to learn, not exploring the world around you, but rather a narrow interpretation of what you're supposed to know at the end of the course. That's basically what student learning outcomes are. You're supposed to at the beginning of the semester say what you want your students to be able to do. Not your final, not pass your final, that doesn't count. But what bits of information or they need to know. Einstein said the most important things you can't measure. What are the most important things to you as an educator? Whether your students get interested in the subject. Can you test that? Whether the student is going to continue in your subject and like it. Can you test that? Critical thinking, can you test that on a multiple choice question?
No.
I mean, it's just ridiculous that people think that that's the way to improve education. But ACCJC has the power, by their sanctions, to force that down people's throats. Even though the federal laws say that you're only supposed to do widely accepted practices, require widely accepted practices. So that's one of their failures. ACCJC is a private, self-perpetuating group of failed administrators Barbara Vino was president of Vista College. She tried in an elitist way to get Vista College out of the Peralta district into their own college. That she lost. She lost her job. And now she's trying to take it out on trustees and districts all over the state. The president of she's the president. The chair of the commission is a former college president who received a vote of no confidence from both the staff and the faculty when she was president. So these are the people that are sort of leading the charge.
And she can't spell
They pick a slate of candidates when the commission becomes open to new members. They pick a slate of possible candidates. Okay, it used to be that they would actually choose the people, but because the Department of Education got on them for doing that, they now actually have the colleges, which means usually the top administrator, vote on the people that are on the ballot. Most of the people on the ballot, they put on the ballot. Now, there are a few people that have recently won seats on the commission that may make a difference. I won't tell you their names. Because Vino is vengeful. You have to understand that. She does not like people to contradict her. The ACCJC has a strict policy of privacy, of secrecy. Everything's done in secret. No one is supposed to let out what happens in their private meetings, which are done in private, okay? If you're on a visiting team, they send out a visiting team to a college. The visiting team is normally made up of 12 people, one of which may be a faculty member. The rest are deans, vice presidents, maybe a president. They come up with a conclusion. Those people are chosen by the commission. And they also buy into this Kool-Aid. You know, they drink the Kool-Aid. So everything they do is done is done out of public. And people are not supposed to say what happens. Now, actually, Bob Bezemek, the lawyer for CFT, brilliant lawyer, and some of the rest of us have been able to get people on the side to tell us what happens in the visiting teams, okay? People will not come forward publicly because they will be kicked out. They will never do that again. Their college will need sanctions because of the fear that's being put in people. But we know things that happen. For example, we know that the visiting team recommendations are often changed when they get to the commission. And we know that the recommendations for sanctions, which are private, they're never published, by the teams, are upped one often by the commission itself when it votes. So what we have is we have this private group working in secret. It's even worse than that. They have a 3-day meeting. The first 2 days, they go over and they do the sanctions. We just had one in June. They have probably 10,000 pages of material to read. They're going to read it all. Because every committee reports hundreds of pages. The campus reports are hundreds of pages. And there's other documents that they have to read on each college. Okay? There were 21 colleges that were up for sanction this time. So imagine how many pages that is. Could you possibly read that many pages in 2 days and make a decision? No. So something else is going on behind the scenes. My prediction is that Barbara Vino is saying this is how you should vote, and they say, how fast should I vote? And that's the way it goes. Okay? You can't possibly really read it all. It's not possible. And with that kind of action and that kind of oversight, you deprive the education of what could be over 100,000 students. It's a crime. It's an absolute crime. In addition, the ACCJC feels no responsibility to obey state laws and Board of Governors regulations. They have their own financial way of calculating things that doesn't agree with what the State Chancellor's Office says is a good financial situation. They undermine college governance. They actually are working against the reforms made in Assembly Bill 1725 in terms of shared governance, and you saw that in San Francisco, where San Francisco had a great shared governance process, and because it wasn't enough top-down, San Francisco got dinged. They're looking for a top-down, not top from the Board of Trustees, because she hates the Board of Trustees because that's who fired her. That's who fired her. So all over the state, you'll see the attack in Ventura, in Los Angeles, in Coast, in Peralta. In all the multi-campus districts, you'll see the assault on the Board of Trustees. In Ventura, they complained that one of the trustees was speaking out of turn at the board meeting. Now, since I was doing some work for Ventura, I was there when he was doing that. And what he was doing was protecting one of the colleges from cuts. And because he disagreed with the chancellor, the accreditation agency called him down. That's what they're doing. And that's the same thing in San Francisco. What do they complain about? They complain about the fact that the chancellor or president is not allowed to have free rein and do all the decision making. And the board is not supposed to interfere. And once the board makes a decision, none of them are supposed to go public and confront that decision, even if they disagree with it. That's part of the policies that the ACCJC tries to inflict. They try to get you to change your mission, as they did with San Francisco. Even when that mission is consistent with California policy and the California Master Plan of access to everyone who can succeed at a college. That's what California has stood for, is that every person who can succeed, can get something out of going to college, has the right to go to college and get an education. And that's what they're trying to display. And they want you every few years to spend time to redo your mission. For what purpose? Well, in Vino's mind, San Francisco needed to downsize to recognize the current fiscal realities. Now, what San Francisco did, as you know, is they tried not to make the cuts at the class level, not to cut classes. But what Vino wants you to do is spend your money hiring more administrators. That's what she said. That's what the commission said. Hire more administrators. Okay? Hire some new positions. That's her answer. In short, oh, one more thing. The commission is also trying to invade the area of collective bargaining. Now, some years ago, I filed some complaints with some letters with the ACCJC when I was president of the CFT, and even went before that, regarding just calling them out, saying that they cannot suggest that the board do this or that, or require the board to do this or that in terms of the collective bargaining agreement. Again, just this year, just in June, I saw in the Coast District, they told them to put in their contract the requirement that part of the evaluation would be student learning outcomes. That is illegal under California law. They have said time after time, we do not obey California law, nor are we obligated to. They are not a public agency. That's why they don't have to follow the Brown Act and have open meetings like other organizations. But the CFT's complaint believes that they are a quasi-government organization, that they get all of their funding from public funds, and therefore they should obey the public laws of California. This private group of self-appointed people can decide to decertify a college and thus close it down. Because without accreditation, students' credits don't count for anything in transfer. They can't get financial aid, and the college can't be funded by the state, at least the way it is currently. So they have tremendous power, this private group of self-selected failures. The commission has the power and used it to sanction colleges when they don't meet their version of what a college should look like. They have created a reign of terror across this state. Now, I'm old enough to remember the Red Scares of the 50s, where people were afraid to speak out. And they have done that to the California community colleges. I have gone around and talked to people, to college presidents, to faculty members. No one will publicly say what they know are the abuses of the ACCJC for fear that their college will be sanctioned. So let me tell you about their sanctions. From 2003 to 2008, the 6 United States regional accrediting bodies issued a total of 126 sanctions to community colleges in the United States. Of those 106, 112 were issued by ACCJC. 112 out of 126. From June 2011 to June 2012, the ACC issued 48 of the 75 sanctions issued nationwide. 64 of the sanctions, 64%. The colleges represent 19% of the colleges nationwide. So the 19% of the colleges in the country represent 64% of the sanctions. Clearly, the ACCJC is out of line with the rest of the world. In 2013, the ACCJC continued its assault on California community colleges when it sanctioned 10 out of 23 that were up, 43%. And in January, that was in January, and in June, 10 of 21, 47%. In other words, about half the colleges are being sanctioned. And yet Vino has the gall to say in the Huffington Post articles that somehow San Francisco was alone among the state that didn't meet the standards of the hunt. She says that CCSF somehow could meet the standards that 133 other institutions in the Western region did. She has a gall to say that when 40% of, almost 50% of those that came up did not meet the criteria the ACCJC put forward. Now, it's true that they were many on warning, one on probation, none on show cause this time, although College of Sequoias is still on show cause, and they'll answer in January to see what will happen there. If they haven't kissed enough rings, they'll probably have problems too. So the ACCJC has focused on issues of planning, internal governance, fiscal reporting, review of local policies, and the behavior of local governing boards, and you can read that in their own document. They say that in their own documents about what % of their sanctions are in these areas. None have anything to do with education. None. And they keep talking about on the national level, and even Vino says, we're looking for outcomes. These are not outcomes, these are inputs. Your report, your planning, your governance, your fiscal reporting, your review of local policies, the behavior of the local board, those are inputs. Those are not outputs. The emphasis supposedly is supposed to be outputs. Now, how you do outputs, I don't know, but that's what they claim, when in fact they're doing just the opposite. Now, one of the things with San Francisco was, what's the difference between a recommendation and a requirement? In 2006, it's true, San Francisco got some recommendations from the visiting team, but the commission itself gave San Francisco a clear accreditation. According to their rules, you cannot get a clear accreditation unless you've met all the standards. That's their rules. You have to meet all the standards. So in 2006, we can assume that San Francisco met all the requirements. Then suddenly, 2012, they vote show cause based on these recommendations. And even when you read Vino's letter to San Francisco, which I hope you'll read, she talks about them as recommendations, not demands. She doesn't use the word demands. And that will be one of the interesting things that happen when appeals are made or legal cases are brought forward. So they meet these 2 days. They vote, commission votes on which sanctions to give. And then the last day, they have public comment. So they voted, right? And the next day, they have an open meeting. Now, did any of you try to attend that open meeting? Did any of you get in? No. No. A few people got in. Maybe 20 people got in a room that holds over 100. They didn't want you there. When they have an open meeting, it's not what most people would call an open meeting. But even if you go there, what's the point? All the decisions have been made. Now, one of the things they do allow, and I'll admit this, because it's true, and that is that they allow the college to come in during the closed session and address the issues. Okay? But when the college goes in, they don't know what level of sanction is being recommended. So they're like disarmed. Most colleges won't go in. Why raise a fuss when you don't know what's going to happen? Maybe we're okay. Maybe they're not going to do anything to us. Why should we raise a fuss? So again, the process is not a fair process. In the case of San Francisco, it's a process for San Francisco had failed. Then what happens? Now we have the decision of the ACCJC. San Francisco is disaccredited July 31st, 2014. What happens in the meantime? First, the college can ask for a review of the decision. The commission that made the decisions decides on the review. We call that a kangaroo court. It's called a kangaroo court. So the commission that made the decision decides whether the decision was right or wrong. Okay, the next step is you can file an appeal. Now, the union can't file an appeal. Students can't file an appeal. Only the college can file an appeal. College files an appeal. The ACCJC appoints the members of the panel. They can't be members of the ACCJC. So they appoint. How do you like people to appoint? How do you like your enemies to appoint your court? Is that how you would like to be judged? The people that are in the same ideology as the commission, because they're not going to appoint anybody that's not, but they don't know who they are, they're going to judge. At that point, what's going to happen? That's the interesting thing. If the panel actually does their work and finds that San Francisco should not have been disaccredited, their decision is final. So something could happen at that point. At that point, if the appeal is lost, there is no other appeal possible. The ACCJC does not have to meet again on the accreditation issue of San Francisco. So at that point, in some sense, the game could be over, except for the CFT. The CFT has filed. CFT and Local 2121 have filed a complaint against the commission with the Department of Education. They filed a almost 200-page complaint. What? 200. I'm sorry, almost 300-page complaint. The commission then replied with a 7-page denial of the complaint. None of it addressed any of the issues. Any legal issues that were raised, they said they don't listen to legal issues. And anyway, their lawyer has already told them that everything's okay. Everything's okay. Their lawyer told them. You know, I don't think the lawyer has been in a room with competence for quite a while. In any case, the Department of Education said that was not a sufficient reply and has required the commission to come back and actually answer the complaint. Okay, what were the areas where CCSF was supposed to be out of compliance? Let me read. Institutional effectiveness. Student learning programs and services, including instructional programs. Student support services, library and learning support services. Physical resources and technology resources. Financial resources, leadership and governance, including decision-making roles, process, and board administrative organization. Commission policy on distance ed, and institutional degrees. Actually, if you read the visiting team, you'll see that most of them, they say very clearly that the college was impressive, their words, in engagement and responsiveness of the entire college to take corrective measures to meet the ACCJC accreditation standards and eligibility requirements to the commission directives in its July 3rd, 2013 accreditation decision letter. So the team praised the college, but when you read the actual comments, they're all, virtually all about that they didn't meet it in a timely manner, that they didn't complete the loop. You can't complete the loop in some of these in a year. They're just not those kinds of things. It's a fraud. It's impossible. But it's a lot better than happened to Compton. When Compton lost its accreditation, they had less than 6 months to make the changes. And one thing you should know about the Compton when they lost their accreditation, they too, as San Francisco, as the Board of Governors just did, put them under a special trustee. And when the commission ruled that accreditation shall be taken away from Compton College, one of the reasons given was that they did not satisfy the policy that the board had to be a functioning board. So by keeping the board out, they were destined to lose their accreditation. Now, if you listen carefully to Bryce Harris, Chancellor of the community colleges, when they asked him about that at the hearing the other day, he said, we will try to integrate the board back in before the time. He did say that. Okay. Now, Vino did say in the Huffington Post yesterday, she gave some kind of vague thing about the decision is not final. So maybe, in fact, there have been some talks with Bryce Harris behind the scenes to make it possible for them to look again at the accreditation. We'll see. But in the meantime, you're going to have to continue to take the three-pronged approach that you've been taking. The college, the unions, continued legal work, and going to the Department of Education and going to court if necessary. The people on campus working their ass off together, coordinated, and then this group continue to agitate as you have. You're going to need all three. And then it's still going to be a question of what happens at the end. Don't let them kill your spirit. Don't let them kill your rage. Go to it. Thank you.